The Black Friday BOGO sale is here at All Family Pharmacy, and let me tell you, this is the kind of deal that actually matters. From November 24th through December 2nd, when you buy one ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, or mebendazole, you get another one absolutely free. So at a time when Americans are tired of being lectured and restricted by bureaucrats, this is your chance to be prepared on your terms. No politics, no gatekeepers, just real options that put you in control. Here's how simple it is. Go to allfamilypharmacy.com/stone. Place your order online and a licensed physician reviews it immediately. Once approved, your medication ships straight to your door, fast, private, and secure. This Black Friday event lasts only 1 week and supplies are limited. So when the inventory is gone, that's it. No extensions, no second chances. Just like every other real deal worth talking about seriously. If you want to stay ready, stay protected, and stay independent, go to allfamilypharmacy.com/stone before December 2nd and lock in your Black Friday BOGO deal. Take control of your health, stay prepared, and stay free.
The Stone Zone. Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
You are now entering the Stone Zone. Well, in breaking news, a federal judge dismissed the case against former FBI Director James Comey, as well as New York Attorney General Letitia James. The judge did so after determining that the appointment of U.S. Attorney Lindsay Halligan was unlawful. Judge Cameron McGowan Curry, a Clinton appointee, is incorrect in her ruling. This is called wrongly decided by lawyers, and this will clearly be appealed, or more precisely, the charges against both Comey and James will be refiled. But I do want to point out the differences between my case and the case of FBI Director James Comey. First of all, it's important to recognize we were charged with the exact same crimes, lying to Congress under oath. In my case, no misstatement that I made to Congress was material. In other words, I did say things that were incorrect. Those mistakes were not willful, and there was never any evidence or proof put forward by the government that I lied to cover any underlying crime. Very different than the situation surrounding FBI Director Comey. But in my case, 29 heavily armed FBI agents stormed my home in full SWAT gear, wearing night goggles and brandishing fully automatic M4 assault weapons, terrorizing my wife and my dogs. And of course, as most people know, there just happened coincidentally to be a CNN camera crew 25 feet from my front door. James Comey, on the other hand, was allowed to leisurely turn himself in almost 10 days after charges against him were announced. So what's with that? And then secondarily, of course, a federal judge immediately gagged me, so I was unable to defend myself on television, cable, radio, social media, the internet, yet James Comey was been able to, both he and his lawyer, my lawyers were also gagged by the judge, both Comey and his lawyer, the incredibly incompetent Abbe Lowell, were allowed to spin constantly in the wake of his indictment. I was gagged. Why wasn't he gagged? The judge in my case specifically prohibited my defense attorneys from raising the question of whether I had been selectively prosecuted or whether there was a political motivation in my prosecution. But there was no such prohibition put on either Comey or Letitia James. But what's even more interesting here is the fact that they knocked this case out, not based on the facts, not based on the evidence, not based on the charges, but based solely on a claim that Lindsay Halligan, who was appointed the interim U.S. attorney in the Eastern District of Virginia's appointment, was illegal. Well, the problem with that is pretty simple. Robert Mueller's appointment to be special counsel, we now know, was unconstitutional. How do we know this? Well, because the exact same fact pattern exists in the appointment of Jack Smith. Federal court judge in Florida declared the appointment of Jack Smith unconstitutional because he was never confirmed by the United States Senate, because there was no law that established the special counsel's office to which he was appointed, and there was no appropriation for the funds to pay for his $30 million investigation. That is, of course, identical to the facts surrounding the appointment of Robert Mueller. Mueller was never confirmed by the U.S. Senate. He was not a sitting U.S. attorney, just like Jack Smith. There was no law in place that created the position to which he was appointed. And, of course, there was no appropriation to pay for his witch hunt. So why do we throw out the case here against Comey and James, but the case against me was not thrown out? We now know, based on the Smith decision, that Mueller's appointment was equally unconstitutional, even though an epically corrupt D.C. appeals court upheld the constitutionality of Robert Mueller's appointment. That's the same court that, by the way, when I appealed the unconstitutionality of the gag rule against me, because when you are charged with a crime, you don't lose your free speech rights. It's a violation of your First Amendment right, which is very much intact, even if you are charged incorrectly or unfairly with a crime. But the D.C. Appeals Court, which ruled very quickly when it came to the constitutionality of Smith's appointment, in my case, they sat on my appeal for 8 months. 8 months while the Washington Post and CNN pounded on me, calling me a Russian asset day in and day out. Judge Amy Berman Jackson, every bit as corrupt and biased as Judge Cameron McGowan Curry, insisted that I had to be gagged because my being allowed to defend myself in public could taint the jury pool. If that's true, why did she keep the gag on me on place after I was convicted and before I was sentenced, and after I was sentenced just before they were prepared to ship me to prison? You see, we have a two-tiered justice system here, folks. There's one set of rules for Bill Clinton and Barack Obama and Joe Biden and their appointees, and there are other rules for those who support Donald Trump. So the truth is, this case, the case of Comey, is hard up against the statute of limitations, which runs out in January. So whether a deputy in the Eastern District of Virginia could refile that case remains to be seen. I think it's important to point out that the U.S. attorney who was in the Eastern District of Virginia and who was secretly preparing a 51-page memorandum to advocate for no charges being filed against Comey, failed to disclose a shocking, stunning, and highly illegal conflict of interest, one that has only been reported here in the Stone Zone. Let me get this straight. U.S. Attorney Eric Siebert, who was appointed by Donald Trump, but on the recommendation of liberal Republican Governor Glenn Youngkin, who was approved by the two left-wing senators from Virginia, and ultimately confirmed not by the U.S. Senate, but by the federal judges of the district. That's how you know he's corrupt. Never disclosed that his father-in-law, his wife's father, was the godfather to James Comey's daughter. Never disclosed that his father-in-law had worked for James Comey as a private attorney. On that basis alone, frankly, Eric Siebert should be disbarred, and I, among others, will file a formal complaint with the Bar Association in Virginia. You see, when Trump learned of this outrageous conflict of interest, and it became clear that Siebert was preparing to give his pal Comey a pass, he replaced Siebert with Lindsay Halligan. Lindsay Halligan was serving as the interim U.S. attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia ever since. Now, it is amazing to watch the media try to denigrate Lindsay Halligan. She is extraordinarily attractive, but they keep calling her a beauty queen. They keep calling her an insurance lawyer. Actually, she graduated cum laude from college. She got her law degree at the age of 24, getting out of law school early. She became a senior partner at a major Florida law firm where she headed their civil litigation practice, and she's an expert very specifically on property and mortgage law. Just because she's physically attractive, and trust me, she's a smoke show, doesn't mean that she's either dumb or incompetent. In fact, she's done an extraordinary job It doesn't really look like the Justice Department under Pam Bondi gave her very many resources. So what we have here was a political decision, and the enemies of transparency have seized upon Halligan to try to help corrupt actors like James Comey and Letitia James escape justice. Let's be very clear. Today's ruling had nothing whatsoever to do with the facts or the evidence or the Constitution or the law. They dismissed these cases on a technicality, not dealing with the questions. Let's be very clear. Letitia James knowingly broke the law. She lied on every single mortgage document she signed in a 43-year period. That is a crime spree. And she very clearly got a mortgage only weeks after she put Donald Trump on trial in Manhattan, where she overstated the value of her assets, exactly what she accused Trump of, and she got a lower mortgage rate and insurance rate because she falsely claimed that she would be a full-time resident in the Virginia property that she got a mortgage for. That is the inescapable truth. But whether it's the Wall Street Journal or the Washington Post or the New York Times, they don't want to look at the documents. They just buy this argument that the prosecution of Letitia James is politically motivated. It is a farce. And frankly, in all honesty, if I were a Republican member of Congress right now, if I were a member of the House, I would get 3 or 4 of my colleagues, and I would simply get this transcript, and I would file articles of impeachment against Judge Cameron McGowan Curry. By the way, the judge referred to Lindsay Halligan, who is the interim U.S. attorney, as a puppet from the bench the other day. That is judicial abuse. So I frankly think that we have co-equal branches of government in the country. I've looked at the Constitution. Nowhere does it say that the judicial branch is superior or higher than the legislative branch. There has to be accountability for these rogue left-wing federal judges who, once again, ignore the Constitution, the law, the facts, the evidence, or the rules, and issue these entirely illegal and unjust decisions. Thus far, I want to point out there have been 0 prosecutions for anyone connected to the Russian collusion hoax, the greatest single abuse of power and dirty trick in the history of American politics. It is nothing less than an abuse of power in which James Comey, John Brennan, the CIA director, James Clapper, the director of national intelligence, Susan Rice, the national security advisor, Vice President Joe the Vegetable Biden, Barack Obama himself, Robert Mueller, Andrew Weissman, the epically corrupt former federal prosecutor. By the way, dynamite new documentary and book coming out on him called Pitbull, the most corrupt prosecutor in American history. He has a long history of judicial misconduct or prosecutorial misconduct. I've read the script. It's pretty amazing. But to date, even though the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, has released all the documents which are smoking gun proof that the Democrats conspired to push what they knew was completely fabricated evidence framing President Donald Trump as a Russian agent in what was really a soft coup attempt to get him out of office, there have been 0 prosecutions. We did break a story here in the Stone Zone a week ago that the prosecutors in the Southern District of Florida had issued subpoenas to John Brennan and allegedly 30 others, but my sources tell me that there have been no subpoenas adhered to, there have been no testimony taken, and that there has been no grand jury impaneled. You have to wonder what's going on. In the meantime, we'll talk about this when we get back. It was announced that the Trump Justice Department is now investigating the Federal Federal Housing Finance Administrator, Bill Pulte, and White House Pardon Attorney Ed Martin for their actions in referring the discrepancies in Senator Adam Schiff's mortgage documents. Once again, Schiff claimed a a residence in Burbank, California as his principal legal residence. At the same time, he claimed that a home in Potomac, Maryland was his principal legal residence, getting tax breaks, lower insurance rates, and lower mortgage rates in both. If I did that, trust me, they'd indict me tomorrow. So it appears that it's Trump loyalists who are now under the gun, not the fraudsters who make a mockery of the Constitution while plotting against Donald Trump. I'm Roger Stone. You're in the Stone Zone, and we'll be right back.
This shrimp and coconut sauce is divine. What's your secret?
Goya coconut milk.
How does it taste so good?
It's all in that real coconut flavor and that rich, creamy texture.
What about thickeners and added sugars?
None. Just smooth, coconutty goodness.
What can I make with it?
From curries to sweet treats like coconut flan, the possibilities are endless.
Goya coconut milk. Take your cooking to the next level. No question about it. Find it in the Goya section of your local grocery store. If it's Goya, it has to be good.
This episode is brought to you by Blink. Blink Friday starts now with up to 65% off Blink Smart Security. Check on your pets all season long with new Blink Mini 2K Plus cameras. See your gifts arrive in head-to-toe view with Blink Video Doorbell. Ready to use right out of the box. Just unwrap Blink and go. From pet parents to jet setters to busy families, Blink Friday deals have your holidays covered. Shop now at Amazon.com/Blink.
Introducing Meta Ray-Ban Display, the world's most advanced AI glasses. With a full color display built into the lens of the glasses, it's there when you need it and gone when you don't. Send and receive messages, translate or caption live conversations, collaborate with Meta AI, and more. Be one of the first to try Meta Ray-Ban Display. Visit meta.com/Meta Ray-Ban Display to book a demo and find your pair.
Say hello to the all-new Alexa Plus and see how Alexa can do so much more for you. Need tickets to see your favorite artist? Craving your comfort restaurant? Just sit back, relax, and talk naturally. Alexa's on it. It learns your style, anticipates what's next, and makes it happen across Echo, Fire TV, and more. Learn more at Amazon.com/new Alexa.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back to the Stone Zone. Yesterday was the 62nd, I guess it was Saturday, was the 62nd anniversary of the brutal murder of President John F. Kennedy. If you've been following social media, I've been going back and forth with Gerald Posner. Gerald Posner is the author of Case Closed, the New York Times best-selling book that tries to make the case that the Warren Commission is right, and Lee Harvey Oswald, a lone nut, acting alone, shot President John F. Kennedy with 3 bullets, all from the rear. It is, of course, nonsensical. Why was the Warren Commission never actually shown the actual x-rays or autopsy photos? Instead, they were given artists' renderings of them. Why did the doctors, in a recent documentary by Paramount entitled What the Parkland Doctors Saw, why did the doctors at Parkland Hospital in Dallas, every one of them, say that they saw wounds in John F. Kennedy consistent with his being shot from the front and the back, including a huge blowout wound in the back of his head, which means the bullet would have come from the front? Why were there no powder burns, no nitrates on Lee Harvey Oswald's chest or his arms or his hands? And why didn't they test the alleged weapon, which at first they said was an Italian Carcano rifle from World War II, but the rifle that is being held up in a picture of by a Dallas police officer is a German precision instrument, not the Italian rifle. But if Oswald had shot this leaky rifle, why was there no powder burns all over him? Now, I will stick to my theory, is that Lyndon Baines Johnson, the man with the most to lose, a man under federal investigation for corruption, a man about to not only be dumped from the 1964 ticket, but about to be prosecuted in the Bobby Baker and Billy Saul Estes cases, lured John Kennedy to Dallas, dictated the motorcade route, tried at the last minute to put his arch enemy, Senator Ralph Yarborough, in the death car with Kennedy and move his protege, Governor John Connally, to the vice presidential car, something that President Kennedy refused to do. Why, in the photographs and the newsreels of the motorcade route, this is very interesting. You see, in the vice presidential car, you see Senator Yarborough, Lady Bird Johnson, and LBJ. And then in the next frame, LBJ is missing, and this is before the first shot is fired. Why? I'll tell you why. Because LBJ, according to the Secret Service agents and also Ralph Yarborough in his oral history, all say LBJ hit the deck in his limousine before the first shot was fired in Dallas on November 22nd, 1963, 62 years ago. And lastly, the fingerprint 29 found in the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository building is that of Malcolm Mac Wallace, a henchman and hatchet man for Lyndon Baines Johnson. Irrefutable fact. You're listening to the Stone Zone. I'm Roger Stone, and, well, we'll be right back.
Hey, Roger, give me one moment here.
Yep.
And now, a message from McAfee.
Your package couldn't be delivered.
You owe thousands in unpaid tolls!
You want a free gift.
If texts like these sound familiar, McAfee can help. McAfee automatically identifies text and email scams, as well as AI-generated audio, to help you stay safe. If they're faking it, they're not making it past us. Get award-winning scam detection today. McAfee.com/keepitreal.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back into the Stone Zone. Well, I'm sure by now you've seen it. This now infamous video in which 6 Democrat members of Congress openly urge our current military personnel to disobey any order by President and Commander-in-Chief Donald Trump if it is illegal. Not a single one of these Democrats can identify any order issued by the President or the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, that is either unconstitutional or illegal. So now the Department of War is threatening to court-martial Senator Mark Kelly of Arizona after he participated in the video in which he and his Democrat colleagues urged members of our personnel to disobey orders. Many of us here in the Stone Zone have noted this message quite blatantly violates U.S. code. The Department of War's response read in part today. The Department of War has received serious allegations of misconduct against Captain Mark Kelly, U.S. Navy retired. In accordance with Uniform Code of Military Justice, 10 U.S.C. 688, and other applicable regulations, a thorough review of these allegations has been initiated to determine whether further actions, which may include recall to active duty for court-martial proceedings or administrative measures. This matter will be handled in compliance with military law, ensuring due process and impartiality. Unlike the ruling today in the Eastern District of Virginia, where politics ruled the day. And Letitia James, if you're resting easy, trust me, you've got more indictments coming based on public documents that anyone can read. I've gone through all of Letitia James's disclosures to the state of New York. They are rife with missing information or information that is willfully incorrect. But in the case of Kelly, I've tangled with him before. Folks may not know this, but I criticized Senator Kelly when I noted that his gig as a U.S. Senator from Arizona is his side job. His real job is a partner with a Chinese communist company that makes surveillance balloons. I said at the time that I thought that was treasonous, that he should be charged, tried, and I pointed out that the penalty for treason under U.S. law is capital punishment. Of course, the left-wing media said that Roger Stone said Senator Kelly should be executed for his criticism of Donald Trump, which is, of course, not what I said at all. They leave that little part out there about the trial. It's how the fake news media works. Senator Kelly probably thought getting on a video would be a good photo op in order to satiate the more rabid parts of the Democrat base. It's not likely he realized he was committing a seditious act. That's what the president called it on Truth Social, sedition. That's what it is. But ignorance in this case is not an excuse. Senator Kelly, who has billed himself as a military hero and built his career in politics from that, has proven that he will undermine the military and the U.S. national security goals for the purposes of, well, political expediency. Senator Kelly is a partisan hack. In this case, he did the crime, and frankly, he should accept the punishment. I support a fair trial, but the court-martial for Senator Mark Kelly. Meanwhile, President Donald Trump is working with Secretary of State Marco Rubio to revise the 28-point peace plan that would end the war between Ukraine and Russia. But this has not sat well with our NATO warmonger allies. In fact, they've taken great offense on it. You see, they want to keep the war going in perpetuity under the ridiculous premise that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky can actually win. In fact, my own sources in Ukraine tell me he may be thinking of fleeing to Greece. This war is lost. In response, Europe has released their own peace plan meant to completely undermine President Trump's serious efforts and keep the status quo going even longer. By the way, I drove down to Miami last week and looked at the condominium that Zelensky owns there, a $3.8 million condominium. How does a former actor who's comedian, now president of Ukraine, afford such an expensive property? It's an interesting question, isn't it? Our NATO allies are looking at an enormous pot of money that will be divvied up among them to rebuild their national defenses. But in order to get that money, they need to keep the status quo going even longer, ensuring that more Ukrainians and more Russians get thrown into the meat grinder needlessly. The counterproposal put up by the United Kingdom, France, and Germany does not assure that NATO will stay out of that Ukraine will stay out of NATO. And that, of course, is the poison pill. As I pointed out here in the Stone Zone again and again, when the Russians agreed to the reunification of East and West Germany, the United States signed an agreement, the Budapest Memorandum, with the Russians, in which we very specifically agreed not to push Ukraine into NATO, which more precisely means not to mount NATO missiles paid for by you, the taxpayers, on the ground in Ukraine, pointed at their neighbor, Russia. We reaffirmed that agreement in the Minsk Accords. Under the vegetable Joe Biden, we have violated those agreements by our support for the war in Ukraine. The plan put forward by the NATO nations also freezes the current front lines for the start of discussions of territorial exchanges, which Russia believes would allow Ukrainian forces to regroup and rearm. The European plan also does not limit a Ukrainian military buildup, although I don't think U.S. taxpayers should pay for that, would allow Ukraine to invite friendly forces into their country for military assistance, and does not mandate for Ukraine to remain neutral. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has not acknowledged the existence of this rival plan, which indicates the Trump administration is likely to ignore it and to continue pushing towards their negotiated peace. The Trump peace plan has been demonized by war hawks and the fake news as something that is akin to the surrender to Russia, but it's simply not the case. The Trump plan would actually commit U.S. forces to securing the stability of Ukraine, keeping Russia from any further act of aggression. It's a realistic plan that actually moves the region towards peace, which Europe clearly doesn't want. Europe wants endless war subsidized by the U.S. taxpayers, and their fake peace plan is a red herring designed to accomplish those goals. Zelensky, who, yes, has a golden toilet in the presidential palace, has gotten very fat and happy, and even he admits that we cannot account for hundreds of the millions of dollars that we have sent to Ukraine. President Trump has given Zelensky and the Russians an ultimatum. They must sign the U.S. peace agreement by Thanksgiving, or this war will be over, and I believe President Trump will withdraw his support for the Ukrainian war effort. Everyone around the world is praying for an end to this egregious war. I go back to the debates in the presidential campaign when President Trump was asked whether he favored victory for Russia or Ukraine, and he said, "What I want is for the killing to stop." I think that says it better than anything else. Meanwhile, Congressman Eric Swalwell, you remember him. He's the guy who broke wind on national television and then got caught having an adulterous affair with a communist Chinese spy named Fang Fang. At the same time, he was on the House Intelligence Committee with full access to America's deepest secrets and classified documents. He got caught last week. This seems to be something Letitia James and his colleague and mentor Adam Schiff engaged in. He's a congressman from Livermore, California, where he has no residence whatsoever. Yet he claims on a deed that a home that he owns in Washington, D.C. is his principal legal residence. So rather than withdraw from the race for Congress, which is what he should do, he actually declared his bid to run for governor of California. This is what is known as failing upward. The truth is, he's constitutionally barred from running. Because his primary residence is listed in Washington, D.C., that precludes him from running to be governor of California. The California Constitution and the California Elections Code made it steadfastly clear that someone running to be governor of the state must have their primary legal residence in the state of California. Swalwell has become such a swamp creature with so little regard for his constituents that he concerns himself only with Washington, D.C., spends very little time in California. The irony is that he won the seat that he now has by claiming that his predecessor, Pete Fortney Stark, a longtime liberal Democrat, had lost touch with the district and no longer lived there. Talk about hypocrisy. So this has served him well for years, giving him more time to spend in the office with Fang Fang, but now he has to go back to California to try to further his political ambitions. I think it could cost him dearly. In order for Swalwell to be eligible to run for California governor under the law, he would need to quickly reestablish his primary residence, California, and then live there for 5 years. Unfortunately, because the election for governor is in 2026, there is no legal way for him to run for governor. However, he may try to take an exception for one of their favorite Trump-hating dirtbags and look the other way. I wouldn't be shocked if the state of California does not legally prevent him from running, although Republicans cannot allow that to happen. For some other weird reason, Swalwell, who's not exactly a genius, has stopped shaving, and he appears to have stopped bathing. In fact, he appears to be in the Steve Bannon School of Style and Hygiene. It's really quite shocking. We must make our voices heard and spread the word. You have to protest, file lawsuits, and do whatever is necessary to keep low-life like Swalwell out of the governorship of the Golden State. Bring disgrace upon those who set up President Trump as a Russian agent and spread malicious lies to American people when they themselves were conspiring with a communist Chinese spy. I like to say he penetrated her and then she penetrated his office by placing employees there who had access to classified documents through his membership in the House Intelligence Committee. I think Swalwell needs to be made an example of. I can't think of anyone less fit to be in the Congress, never mind as governor of the state, once ruled and governed by Governor Ronald Reagan. Meanwhile, dozens of anti-ICE protesters near Miami were arrested over the weekend after they attempted to block an entrance to an ICE detention facility near the infamous Alligator Alcatraz site in South Florida. They wore "ICE Kidnapped My Neighbor's" t-shirts as they engaged in histrionics, hoping to play the victim while they are arrested as the fake news cameras were rolling. The demonstration was organized by the Sunrise Movement, a far-left activist organization. They made a post on social media for the rally stating that ICE is a criminal organization that is terrifying everyday Americans on behalf of fascist billionaires. Actually, they're the terrorist organizations, and they're violating law, trying to protect dangerous, illegal immigrant gangbangers that are here in the United States. According to this Sunrise Movement, They say we have no right to kidnap their neighbors who are here illegally, and it's time for every citizen to stand up to their intimidation tactics. The protesters expect to be charged now with obstruction of justice, and they're lucky if they don't receive domestic terrorism charges. Recently, the first Antifa members in the country pleaded guilty to domestic terrorism charges. No longer are these leftist terrorist groups who advocate violence, mayhem, and death able to obfuscate their way out of responsibility for their actions. Whether or not they want to rebrand themselves, shall we say, as the Sunrise Movement or anything else, we know these groups are part of the same entity. They're trained and funded by the same group of nonprofit organizations and NGOs, largely with foreign money. They're operating in unison to tear down the foundations of a free America. It's time to treat them like what they are, enemy combatants, and if we have to open up Gitmo for these Antifa thugs, it's time for us to do so. This is the Stone Zone, and I'm Roger Stone, where 5 days a week we talk news, history, politics, and, dare I say it, culture. We had a great show yesterday commemorating the 62nd anniversary of the brutal murder of President John F. Kennedy. And I had a very lively exchange online with Gerald Posner, the author of Cased Clothes. Gerald Posner is a very smart guy, wrote a great book on 9/11 entitled While America Slept. But he is actually, I believe, the last person on the face of the planet who actually believes Lee Harvey Oswald, a lone communist nut, who defected to Russia and immediately got his citizenship back and returned to the United States, killed President John F. Kennedy and acted alone. I'm Roger Stone. We'll be right back.
Kay Jewelers Black Friday sale is on. Now's the time to get up to 50% off Black Friday deals. With savings this big, you can get gifts for everyone on your list. Plus, if Black Friday lines aren't your thing, skip them. At Kay, you can buy online and pick up in store or get free shipping right to your home. This holiday season, unwrap love and savings with Kay. Exclusions apply. See Kay.com/exclusions for details.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
This holiday season, help the Red Apple Audio Networks feed those in need. Join the Red Apple Audio Networks, AARP, New York City, the Pleath Athletic League, Gristedes and D'Agostino supermarkets, and Nationwide Imaging Services as we deliver Thanksgiving turkeys to more than 5,000 families across the city. To see how you can help, go to redappleaudionetworks.com/turkey. That's redappleaudionetworks.com/turkey. Once again, help us feed those who are truly in need. Thanks for returning to the Stone Zone. There's a lot of talk about the 2026 elections. I was on the air with Laura Loomer a couple weeks ago, and she told me they are lost. I don't believe that. I think back to 1982, before President Ronald Reagan's economic plan brought us the greatest growth in American history in the last 2 years of his presidential term, when many of the panicans were freaking out about the economy. The point, of course, is that food prices are down, but they're not down enough. In fact, food prices today are not as low as they were the last year that President Donald Trump left office. Gas prices are down, but they're not down as low as they're going to go. Because we did not get the cut in interest rates that we really deserved from the Federal Reserve, because based on the inflation rate and the unemployment rate, the cut in interest rate should have been much deeper. We will get that cut when the current chairman of the Federal Reserve Board leaves office in April. And therefore, there is no way to know how the economy will be cooking in 2026. And the other issue, of course, is redistricting. So as the war over redistricting wages on, the Republican Party received a huge victory yesterday as the U.S. Supreme Court issued a temporary injunction that restores the congressional maps passed earlier this year in Texas that would give Republicans, based on population, additional House seats. Supreme Court Justice Sam Alito granted a request by the state of Texas to pause a court ruling that would have restored the 2021 congressional lines pending a legal challenge. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, who happens to be a friend of mine, celebrated the victory and stated his office would look forward to continue to press forward a case on the merits. President Trump is actually one who called for Texas to withdraw its congressional maps over the summer, which, based on population changes, would give Republicans 5 more seats, but without using race as a basis for redistricting. California, under the leadership of Gavin Newsom, rebutted with Proposition 50, which eliminates that state's independent redistricting commission, so lines could be drawn in a completely partisan manner based on race, which passed early this month. But Republican lawmakers in that state are challenging that in court. Meanwhile, Republican lawmakers in states like Indiana and Florida are talking about redrawing their maps. I believe Florida could gain as many as 3 new states. To the great ire of President Trump and MAGA, Indiana Republicans seem to be stalling on redistricting. It shows the big difference between Trump-era Republicans who understand Stone's rules that losers don't legislate and are willing to do, and others who are willing to do what it takes to ensure that victory, and the old guard stand-pat Republicans who are happy to lose and take crumbs with honor, even if it means the Constitution is destroyed by radical socialists. And those in the Republican Party of Donald Trump, the modern party that represents the working people of America. We must continue to push all of the states who have had shifts in population to redo their congressional redistricting to ensure that Republicans get the fair number of seats. If you're thinking, well, the Democrats will just do the same thing, sorry, they've already done that long ago. New York State has been districted on a partisan basis, so has Illinois. They're out of cards, folks, and if they have an honest election and the economy is as strong as I believe it will be in 2026, all of their aspirations for revenge against Donald Trump, because he's now suddenly holding people accountable for their violations of the law and the Constitution during the 4 years of Joe Biden, in which they mounted the greatest single assault on our Constitution, Operation Arctic Frost, under the illegally appointed special counsel Jack Smith. So it isn't about revenge or retaliation. It's about accountability and justice. Thanks for joining us today in the Stone Zone. Until tomorrow, God bless you and Godspeed.
Thanks for listening to The Stone Zone with Roger Stone. You can hear The Stone Zone with Roger Stone weeknights at 8 on 77 WABC. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode, so you never have to wonder,
what the heck is going on here?
The Black Friday BOGO sale is here at All Family Pharmacy, and let me tell you, this is the kind of deal that actually matters. From November 24th through December 2nd, when you buy one ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, or mebendazole, you get another one absolutely free. So at a time when Americans are tired of being lectured and restricted by bureaucrats, this is your chance to be prepared on your terms. No politics, no gatekeepers, just real options that put you in control. Here's how simple it is. Go to allfamilypharmacy.com/stone. Place your order online and a licensed physician reviews it immediately. Once approved, your medication ships straight to your door, fast, private, and secure. This Black Friday event lasts only 1 week and supplies are limited. So when the inventory is gone, that's it. No extensions, no second chances. Just like every other real deal worth talking about seriously. If you want to stay ready, stay protected, and stay independent, go to allfamilypharmacy.com/stone before December 2nd and lock in your Black Friday BOGO deal. Take control of your health, stay prepared, and stay free.